For so many years, we human beings have taken it for granted that somehow we can continue relating with the environment in whichever way we please. It will sort itself into order. In our actions, we have tended to think that the environment is so expansive and resilient that our actions cannot cause significant harm to it. However, over the years, the signs have increasingly become clear that our attitudes towards the environment are not only a danger to what we have destroyed or harmed, but even to our own survival as human beings. The question of how human beings can responsibly use the environment and coexist with other beings thus preoccupies humanity today due to the increasing realization that the arrogant idea that human beings are more important than anything else is leading us to disaster. Believing that human beings receive divine permission to subdue the earth has come along with vast environmental implications, including destroying what we do not need. We kill some animals for fun, others out of a belief that they are our natural enemies. In our desire to accumulate, we have cleared swamps and forests. We have polluted rivers and lakes. In some cases, the destruction is born out of a struggle to survive, more so in a world where the gap between the haves and have-nots keeps widening, pushing the poor to the periphery where they can only survive by destroying the environment. We need to continue asking ourselves, how can we sustainably coexist in our environment in ways that promote optimal thriving for the entire ecosystem? A thriving environment in turn facilitates development through climate regulation to prevent unfavorable extremes and by boosting tourism. We know it from experience, though, that tourism too could be destructive. How then can we work out ways that facilitate tourism without compromising the environment? Two little rocky islands called Musambwa in Lake Victoria in Uganda's Kyotera district present an interesting case, with some lessons for the rest of the world to learn. It is a striking case of how culture is being used to conserve the environment, while at the same time embracing some lessons from expert conservation knowledge, or what some call modernity. A team of 3 researchers set out to learn more about this mysterious place that they had heard about in bits and pieces from the internet. The team included Jimmy Spire Sentongo from the Department of Philosophy at Makerere University, Samuel Okok, also from the Department of Philosophy at Makerere University, and Frederick Nsibambi from the Cross Culture Foundation of Uganda. Musambwa Island presents a fascinating story of the interaction between human beings, nature, and conservation.
There is something that we want to understand about Musambwa Island because for it is giving us a very unique case. So when you come here, you realize that there is that coexistence. The birds are there, the reptiles that people in other areas fear are also here.
Musambwa Island is a unique space. It's a unique island because of its cultural treasures, and one of the cultural treasures that are very important here is the Mukokowe tree, which is very much respected in Buganda. Respected in the sense that firewood collected from this tree in many families is not used to cook food, But then also it is a space where the rituals of the twins are performed. And it's so interesting that even on the island, it is where the main shrine is. So it is really interesting. And if the resources can be mobilized, I think it can be turned around as a cultural tourism resource.
The team was intrigued by what they had heard and, at first, even feared going to the islands. The name of the islands itself is mystical. In very simple translation, it means Spirit Island. The origin of its name is a matter of conjecture. There are various accounts.
Ekizinga Musambwa ekyo kirina ebyobuwangwa bingi nnyo. Ekisooka tekirinyibwako ndiga, tekitwalibwako ddiba, tekulinnya mukazi.
The waters surrounding the 6-acre island are rich in fish, but there is much more than this economic story. Some of the scanty literature suggests that the little island, the one that is inhabited, had over 5,000 venomous snakes, several other reptiles, and a breeding spot for several bird species. It is the largest breeding site for the grey-headed gulls in Africa. What was more curious was that people coexisted with the snakes. It was taboo to kill them. How on earth could this be possible? For many of us, the immediate reaction in sight of a snake is to look for a stick and hit its head. The team had read that the snakes, which are exclusively the venomous rock cobras, do not bite the over 100 inhabitants of the island. What can we learn from them for environmental conservation? Just as the case was intriguing to the researchers and all that they talked to about it, the team imagined that the island carries significant tourism potential for culture enthusiasts, bird watchers, ecologists, and nature lovers. It should be recalled, though, that in some places, tourism has come along with environmental destruction and cultural erosion. It was therefore important to find out how tourism can be sustainably boosted. The researchers talked to many people on the island and surrounding areas, especially those that, by virtue of their occupations, duration of residence, interests, were expected to know much about the island and its story. The conversations dug below the surface to understand what lay behind the taboos, social conventions, and narratives. The longest living memory of the island is Mzee Emmanuel Katongole, locally known as Mutumbavu or Mbega. Mbega is a Luganda word for spy. Like many islands in Uganda, Musambwa was a place of refuge for criminals from the mainland. Emmanuel earned his name from watching out for approaching strangers to tip off the rest. He is 101 years old now, over half of which have been lived on the island.
Kankuwulire gwe embeera gye nalimu. Nina akaato ke bayita ppala akembawo bweka akatono nga nvuga ningenda eka na buli lwekyabasimba eyo nengula amatooke gange ne gonja.
Over the years, Musambwa Islands have been changing in ecosystem and customs due to a number of mostly human factors. Its population has been growing, but not that much, especially because of the strict taboos. The islets that make up Musambwa Island are two. About 100 people live on the main islet in makeshift houses. The main economic activity is fishing. The smaller islet is not inhabited by people, but with a large bird population that, sometimes during the day, covers almost its entire shoreline. The birds include pelicans, grey-headed gulls, great cormorants, Egyptian geese, African sacred ibis, and so many others. Right from the first time we landed on the island, we were mainly focused on snakes, looking out in the grasses along the little path that leads to the small reception office, lest we get bitten. However, it is mostly the birds that will welcome you on the boats, on rooftops, in trees, on the ground, and in the skies. It is a magnificent presence, a loud announcement of their home in mixed songs. We were warmly welcomed by curious inhabitants, only men. Going to the island, we went through Mr. Enoch Mtale, the chairperson of Musambwa Islands Joint Conservation Organization. The Loose Association was formed in 2006 with the purpose of conserving and promoting tourism on the island. Today, members of the association are the main gatekeepers to the island. Enoch is the local expert on the island and the main tour guide. He as well serves as the administrative leader of the island.
Ekizinga kyalina ebizibu bingi. Mwalimu ebizibu ebyokuvuba obubi ebyennyanja. Mwalimu ekizibu ekyokulya amagi g'ebinyonyi. Era ebinyonyi ebyo byonna bye mwalabye ku kizinga ng'embaata ez'omu ttale, ng'enkowe, entajuga. Mu mbeera eyo nekya Uganda yatandika okukola okunoonyereza butya bw'esobola okukuuma ekizinga ekyo. Ekizinga ekyo kiri wakati mu nnyanja, kiyamba abantu bangi mu bizibu ebyenjawulo ebibeerawo mu nnyanja, okugeza ng'okwewogomawo empewo nga zibadde nnyingi nnyo, okufunawo obuyambi singa amafuta gaba gabaweddeko. Ekyokusatu, waliwo abavubi abalwalira mu nnyanja, kubanga waliwo abavubi abasula mu nnyanja mpaka obudde okukya. Kati oli ayinza okugenda n'asula ne munne mu nnyanja n'abeera bubi ekiro. Kati bw'anoonya waddukira amangu okufuna obuyambi, addukira ku kizinga. Kati ekizinga ekyo ne kibanga emyalo 6 egirina obuvunaanyizibwa ku kyo. Twalaba nga tulina okufuna obwegassi okulaba nga tusobola okukuuma ekizinga olw'emiganyulo gye baali batusomesezza nti tujja kuganyulwamu. Ne tukolawo akakiiko akaawamu nga kalina ba members ku myalo gino gyonna egyetooloddewo 6.
On one of our 4 visits to the island, we found the district tourism officer on a familiarization visit and officers from Nature Uganda, one of the environmental NGOs that have been instrumental in studying and raising the visibility of the island.
Nature Uganda has contributed a lot to the growth of this site, particularly when it comes to the area of information. Nature Uganda started visiting this site since 1991. Yeah, Nature Uganda has been coming every January and every July or every year since 1991 to monitor birds. Someone would ask, why would we monitor only birds? Yeah. The data that we've been collecting, that we collected, helped the organization to increase awareness of the importance of Musambwa Island. For example, as I speak now, this site is being referred to as a Ramsar site. It is a site of international recognition.
First things first. The researchers asked to be showed the snakes, not without fear, but because they had to verify the stories. Walking around the island, they peeped in shelters, bushes, under rocks, and wherever. And then there it was, one big one, under a rock, and a couple of shed skins. Residents say that it depended on the time of the day and one's luck to see the snakes. That sometimes snakes will even cross through people seated in conversation. You may see them on roof poles or in your bed. Killing the rock cobra is taboo because the spirit, call it Musambwa, of the island is believed to manifest through snakes, specifically the rock cobra. They are the owners of the island. Other kinds of snakes can be killed. Walking around one of the vast breeding areas of grey-headed gulls, one has to be careful not to step on their eggs and newly hatched chicks that spread all over the rocks. Clearly, you cannot miss the feeling of being an intruder, an aspect that tourism developers will have to take very seriously. The birds are conspicuously uneasy with people's presence around their nests. Some will peck at your head. Looking at all eggs and chicks, one comes to understand why there would be so many snakes in the ecosystem. They are spoilt for food. You must be wondering, don't the snakes bite the people? With all the snakes said to be on the island, only 2 cases of snake bites have been reported in the known history of the island. One of the victims is none other than Emmanuel. It came to his shelter one night, but he insisted on throwing it outside until it had to speak by other means.
One more. Ologuze wange mbuli teba kesema. Ekiro? Kisotati. Negukumo. Nagalo kwa banagate. Era gukomeo. Omulundi ogwokusatu. Nenda ngubaka. Wanonga ku mutwe bw'entuwa. Negukola gu. Negwewerwa. Lwambodde wano. Amala ennaku 4. Ebintu ne byeyongera. Ningendako ku ttale ewa Musawo. N'abakiki. Kono omusala gwannuma. Omaze ennaku 4. Kono mmaze ennaku 4. N'abakyawa. Omusala gwekituma n'omala ennaku 4.
In fact, even me, that's where I experienced that scenario, that a cobra can pass through your legs. We arranged one time with the FFI for a night there. And that evening when we were seated, they just told us that, shh, be silent. We didn't know what they were meaning. Between his legs, the cobra was coming from behind and was passing. And they were seated all over there. They were just avoiding it, giving it way, and went the other side.
It might sound a mystery that snakes do not bite people on the island, but isn't that mostly because of our received perceptions about snakes, an unquestioned inherited hatred? Snakes mostly bite in self-defense. If not bothered or scared, they are generally peaceful, except if you're their food. But these are neither pythons nor anacondas. Musambwa Island presents an interesting case of the interaction between culture and environmental conservation. Perhaps many of us that have been socialized by modern education into looking for the science of things might immediately dismiss taboos as baseless. Indeed, we have ridiculed and abandoned many of these taboos as outdated. Unfortunately, our science does not always fill the behavioral vacuum left behind after taboos are washed away, and soon, destruction of the environment follows. Many of the things presented as mysteries at the island can indeed be explained by science, but if taboos can work in some context to simplify details and protect values that some people might neither understand nor respect, then why not let them serve? One of the other things Musambwa is famous for is that women are not allowed at the island. Some earlier sources indicated that women do not step on the island. That is not entirely true. Women are permitted to visit, but not reside there. There are actually some few cases of women that resided on the island in the past.
Omwaka nagendayo mu 95. Ngendayo 95 nafunamu obuzibuzi bwawo nga nali mmaze ebbanga nga ndi mulwadde awo. Kati wabaawo mukwano gwange naŋŋamba naye ngeri gy'otalina ssente jangu ogendeko ku zinga eno osobola okufumbayo emmere basobola ogirya ofumbayo emmere n'ofunayo kasente akasobola okubeezaawo. Kati neŋŋenda amalayo emyezi gyali 2.
What is strictly forbidden is engaging in sexual intercourse on the island.
Empewo bwe zajjanga nga bagamba waliwo eyamukutteko empewo nga zitabuse wano waliwo eyamukutteko bwe bityo bwe byabeeranga.
The simple explanation for this is that the spirit of the island doesn't like it. It was narrated by the residents that on one occasion in 2002, a couple engaged in the act and the consequences were disastrous.
Kyenamanyaako waliwo ensisi gye baafuna nga waliwo omukyalo omu n'omwami omu omwami yavanga sayidi z'Ekyebe era kiri mu kyotera ne kati tumuyita kannabulemu yeegattirawo n'omukyala. Empewo ez'amaanyi ne zikunta ku mwalo ne zisitula amaato g'abo ababiri ne gagenda ne gagwa mu ze bayita empanja we baayanikanga mukene. Amaato gonna ne gaatikayatika.
Who would want to annoy the spirits again? So, to avoid the trouble, and since fishing is culturally done by men, women had to be kept away. The men with families leave them on the mainland. One of the few women to have lived on the island ran a small restaurant. Not to take any chances, at night the leaders of the island would ensure that she was locked in the reception house with a padlock fixed from outside. She later had to leave the island as other women on the mainland found it unfair. They demanded that if she did not leave, they were also going to settle there.
Kati okuvaayo kwali bwe kuti ng'abali ku ttale abakyala nabo nga baagala kugenda. Bagabwa abatavaayo naffe eryato tuligwamu naffe tujjeeyo. Lwaki yabeerayo ng'akola ng'ate mugamba abakazi temubakkirizaayo. Kati era ab'oku ttale be bannemesa ne bagamba aveeyo.
Whether it is true or not, that sexual intercourse on the island can attract the wrath of the island spirit, we might never be able to concretely discern. And maybe we do not have to. Why disturb the important belief? The island also serves as a place of worship for some traditionalists. Such is the harmony, though, that birds are not restricted from easing themselves on the holy ground. The second holy ground is under the rocks by the shoreline. Here people come to pray for what they want and to express gratitude for what they've achieved through prayers to the divinity Mukasa. A number of birds on the island are edible. The grey-headed gulls, which constitute the biggest population of birds on the island, lay eggs almost the size of those of chicken. Locals say the eggs were such a delicacy in the past. They would even collect them for sale to the mainland. This had become a threat to the survival of grey-headed gulls, and Taboo offered no solution. This is where other authorities had to come in. Nature Uganda, in collaboration with the Natural Resources Department of Chotera District, intervened to safeguard the islands and the birds.
With that richness, it requires a lot of efforts to see that these are not lost. And with their joining this conservation effort, we managed to identify these sites, and conservation is going on.
Asked why they protect the birds, one of the locals said that akanyonyi ye mukama waffe, meaning the bird is our master.
The conservation they are doing can also pay them in a way that they can get a different livelihood, such that it makes them change their attitude mostly towards the conservation of the area.
Currently, when you go there, they have their book now. There is a fee you pay to maintain their vigor to protect. And that's why they are protecting up to now. They are earning something, and they are seeing that the future is bright.
They have internalized the importance of protecting birds to the extent that it is now part and parcel of their culture. Though the birds will scatter their droppings everywhere and relentlessly sing all through the day, people will not run out of patience. At one instance, when a bird released droppings in the middle of a focus group discussion under a tree, one of the participants quipped, "It is us who sat in their toilet." Musambwa is not without challenges. As you walk around the island, you are advised by locals to watch against landmines. This is the local code for human excreta, which is seen here and there. The emptyable EcoSan toilet that was built in 2002 by Nature Uganda has since filled beyond usage. Despite the challenge above, Musambwa is a place you should visit. For the amazing experience of how cultural wisdom is blended with modern conservation knowledge to realize the coexistence of flora and fauna, the landmine nuisance can be temporarily navigated. Musambwa's is a story with so much for the rest of us to ponder and learn from, to be able to unlearn some of the unsustainable cultures deeply entrenched in our everyday interaction with the natural environment. I think this is a story that has not really been well told, and a story that has high tourism potential. I really think that if much of what we see here is well documented, well marketed, it really presents a very high potential of marketing not only Musambwa Island but also Uganda. Because if you look at all this beauty, and to imagine that many people do not know this story, to imagine that we are visiting places that may not present that much, yet there is all this, yet there is so much to learn in terms of unlearning some of the things that we have conventionally come to believe. For instance, that snakes are our enemies, that, as we are told in some religions, the moment you see a snake, just kill. But here we have a story of people that live with snakes in harmony, that live with birds without eating their eggs, that they have somehow learned the importance of the environment, learn the importance of the biodiversity around them, and manage to protect the environment, protect the birds from being eaten, and protect their eggs, This is one of the biggest breeding places for the grey-headed gulls in Africa. But to hear that it's one of the biggest breeding places for the seagull, yet many of us, even Ugandans, even those living around here, have not heard about it. I think it tells us that there is so much more that we can do in documenting, in marketing, in telling our story, so that it can not only contribute to conservation, but also to promoting tourism and our development generally.
The tourism potential of Musambwa is quite high. The island's visibility needs to be boosted, but with careful measures for tourism not to antagonize the environment. In the spirit of social consciousness and responsibility, working together with the local community, the researchers installed signposts on the mainland in Kalisizo town and Malembo landing site, directing to the island. Musambwa Island is a story of hope. Hope that humans can innovate ways of living in harmony with nature. Hope that human superiority over the rest of nature can be rethought. Hope that culture can retain its values while integrating other desirable ones from modernity. You need to visit this place.